There is a borough in New York City called Queens, not Manhattan, with its skyscrapers and its glamour and its sense of being the center of the universe. Queens, the borough next door, louder, rougher, more working class, more diverse. The borough where taxi drivers and factory workers and immigrants built their lives in the shadow of the most famous skyline in the world. And on the 14th of June 1946, in Jamaica Hospital in Queens, a baby boy was born. His name was Donald John Trump. He was the fourth of 5 children born to Frederick Christ Trump and Mary Ann MacLeod Trump. His father, Fred Trump, was the son of German immigrants, a man who had clawed his way up from nothing during the Great Depression to build a real estate empire in the outer boroughs of New York, not luxury properties. Fred Trump built affordable housing, thousands of units of modest, practical, well-constructed housing for working-class families in Brooklyn and Queens. Fred Trump was tough, disciplined, relentlessly focused on work and money and results. He expected the same from his children. His mother, Mary Ann, had come from Scotland, from the Isle of Lewis, a windswept, remote island in the Outer Hebrides. She had arrived in America at 18 with almost nothing, worked as a domestic servant, met Fred Trump, and built a life with him. Young Donald grew up in a 14-room house in the Jamaica Estates neighborhood of Queens. Comfortable, upper-middle class, but not the gilded world of Manhattan that would later become synonymous with his name. And even as a boy, Donald Trump was difficult to manage. He was loud, aggressive, competitive to a degree that alarmed teachers and classmates alike. When he was 13 years old, his father made a decision. He sent Donald to the New York Military Academy in Cornwall, New York, a military boarding school, strict, disciplined. At the academy, Trump thrived. He found that he loved competition, loved ranking, loved the clarity of a system where you could see exactly where you stood relative to everyone else. He was a good student, a better athlete. He captained the baseball team, and he learned something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Confidence, projected loudly and constantly, is its own kind of power. He graduated in 1964, then Fordham University for 2 years, then the Wharton School of Finance at the University of Pennsylvania. Trump earned an economics degree from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania in 1968. Wharton, the school that produced some of the most powerful financiers and business leaders in American history. Trump graduated in 1968, and immediately he went to work for his father, not because he had no other options, but because he had seen what his father had built, and he wanted to build something bigger. Fred Trump's company was solid, profitable, respected in Brooklyn and Queens, but it was small by the standards Donald was already setting his eyes on. He wanted Manhattan. In the early 1970s, Manhattan real estate was in crisis. The city of New York was essentially bankrupt. Crime was soaring, middle-class families were leaving, property values were collapsing. To most people, this looked like disaster. To Donald Trump, it looked like opportunity. His first major deal was the renovation of the Commodore Hotel, a decaying, failing midtown hotel right next to Grand Central Station. Trump convinced the city of New York to give him a massive tax break. He partnered with the Hyatt hotel chain. He renovated the building completely, transforming it into the Grand Hyatt New York. It opened in 1980 to enormous success. Trump was 33 years old. And then came the project that would make his name synonymous with a certain kind of American excess. Trump Tower, built on Fifth Avenue in Midtown Manhattan, the most prestigious address in New York. Trump Tower opened in 1983, 58 stories, gleaming glass and brass, a 6-story indoor waterfall in the atrium, luxury condominiums, offices, and retail space. Trump put his name on it in letters 6 feet tall on the facade. The Trump brand was born. Through the 1980s, the Trump empire expanded rapidly. Hotels, casinos in Atlantic City, golf courses, airlines, a football team, licensing deals, his name on buildings across the world. He wrote a book in 1987, The Art of the Deal, which spent 48 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. He was everywhere: magazines, television, New York's gossip columns. And then it all nearly collapsed. The early 1990s were brutal for Donald Trump. The economy had turned. The casino business was struggling. He had borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars to fund his expansion, and the debt came due. His casinos filed for bankruptcy. His airline was sold. His yacht was sold. He was nearly $1 billion in debt. For most people, this would have been the end. For Donald Trump, it was a setback. He negotiated with his creditors. He restructured the debt. He used the bankruptcy laws to protect himself personally while his companies reorganized. He survived. And in 2004, something happened that took Donald Trump from being a famous businessman to being a household name across the entire world. The Apprentice, a reality television show where aspiring business people competed for the chance to win a job at the Trump Organization. Each week, a contestant was eliminated, and Trump, seated at the head of a boardroom table, delivered the verdict. "You're fired," 2 words, delivered with a pointed finger and an expression of absolute certainty. The Apprentice ran for 14 seasons. It was one of the most watched shows in America, and it made Donald Trump feel like someone the average American knew, not just read about, but actually knew, sat with every week. He was in people's living rooms. And in American politics, there is nothing more powerful than being in people's living rooms. On the 16th of June 2015, Donald Trump rode down a golden escalator in Trump Tower, surrounded by cameras, by supporters, by the spectacle that Trump had always understood better than almost anyone. He stepped to a microphone, and he said he was running for President of the United States. Mr. Trump announced his candidacy for the presidency on June 16, 2015. He then accepted the Republican nomination for President of the United States in July of 2016, having defeated 17 other contenders during the Republican primaries. 17 other Republican candidates, senators, governors, former governors, experienced politicians with deep networks and long resumes in public service, and Donald Trump, who had never held political office of any kind. The political establishment was not worried. They were amused. The New York Times gave him a 2% chance of winning the Republican nomination. The pundits laughed. What followed was one of the most remarkable political campaigns in American history. Trump did not run a traditional campaign. He held rallies, enormous rallies in arenas and sports stadiums, tens of thousands of people, crowds that no other Republican candidate could match. He said things that no politician had said in decades. Blunt, direct, sometimes shocking statements about immigration, about trade, about the political establishment itself. He called his opponents by nicknames: Little Marco, Lion Ted, Low Energy Jeb. He attacked journalists. He attacked the Republican Party itself, and the crowds loved it, because millions of Americans had spent years feeling that the political establishment did not see them, did not speak for them, did not care about their concerns. And here was a man who was saying loudly, unapologetically, without any apparent fear of the consequences, exactly what they felt. One by one, the 17 Republican candidates fell. He was the first person ever elected to the U.S. presidency without any previous government or military experience. By July 2016, Donald Trump was the Republican nominee for President of the United States. The laughing stopped, but the disbelief didn't, because now he faced Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was one of the most experienced political figures in American history. Former First Lady, former Senator from New York, former Secretary of State. Every major poll showed her winning. Every major newspaper endorsed her. The entire political and media establishment of the United States believed with extraordinary confidence that Hillary Clinton would be the next president. On the night of November 8, 2016, the results began coming in. At first, everything seemed normal. Clinton was winning states she was supposed to win, and then Florida was supposed to be close, but the models gave Clinton a slight edge. Trump won Florida, then North Carolina, another swing state, another Trump win, and then Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, 3 states that had voted Democratic in every presidential election for decades. 3 states that the Clinton campaign had not seriously contested because they assumed they were safe. Trump won all three. On November 8, 2016, Donald Trump won a majority of the Electoral College, winning the U.S. presidential election, although his opponent, Democrat Hillary Clinton, won the popular vote. The anchors on television could barely process what they were seeing. Pundits who had spent months explaining why Trump could not win were now struggling to explain how he had won. Around the world, people who had been watching in cafes and bars and living rooms went silent. Donald Trump, the reality television star, the real estate developer, the man who had descended the golden escalator 16 months earlier, had just been elected the 45th President of the United States. He was inaugurated as President of the United States on January 20, 2017. The outsider had won, completely, shockingly, against every prediction. The Trump presidency was unlike any in American history. He signed executive orders on immigration. He withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement. He renegotiated trade deals. He signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, the largest overhaul of the American tax code in decades. He appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett. He met with Kim Jong-un of North Korea for historic face-to-face summits. He brokered the Abraham Accords, normalization agreements between Israel and several Arab states. And throughout all of it, he tweeted, constantly, relentlessly, without filter, at 3 in the morning, about his enemies, his allies, the media, whatever was on his mind. On December 18, 2019, Trump was impeached by the House of Representatives. On January 13, 2021, he became the only president in U.S. history to be impeached a second time. He was impeached twice. Both times, the Senate acquitted him. In November 2020, he lost re-election to Joe Biden. He refused to concede. He claimed the election had been stolen. Courts rejected his challenges. Over 60 cases, almost all dismissed. On January 6, 2021, a mob of his supporters stormed the United States Capitol building. On the 20th of January 2021, Donald Trump left the White House without attending the inauguration of his successor. He went to Mar-a-Lago, and most of the world assumed the Trump era was over. They were wrong. In 2023, Trump was indicted, then indicted again, then again, and again, 4 separate criminal cases, 91 charges across the 4 cases. The political establishment assumed the indictments would destroy his campaign. They did not. Every time a new indictment was announced, Trump's fundraising surged. His poll numbers went up. His supporters became more energized, not less. He turned every legal proceeding into a political rally. He posted his mugshot on social media. Within hours, it had become one of the most viral images of the year. On the 13th of July 2024, at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, a gunman opened fire. Donald Trump was shot during a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13, 2024. A bullet grazed his ear. He was knocked to the ground. Secret Service agents surrounded him, and then he rose. He stood up. He pumped his fist in the air, blood streaking the side of his face. The crowd around him in shock and chaos. The image went around the world in minutes. His supporters saw a man who could not be stopped. In November 2024, Donald Trump won the presidential election again. Trump won a second term as president in the election of 2024, again as a Republican, after having lost to Joe Biden 4 years earlier. In 2020, this time he won both the Electoral College and the popular vote, defeating Democrat Kamala Harris, the sitting vice president. Trump's vice presidential running mate for his second term was Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio. He won both the Electoral College and the popular vote. President Trump won his second re-election campaign against Vice President Kamala Harris in November 2024, making him the only president aside from Grover Cleveland to be elected to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. President Trump began his second term in the White House on January 20, 2025. He was 78 years old, the oldest person ever to be inaugurated as President of the United States. And on the 20th of January 2025, he walked back into the White House. How do you explain Donald Trump? How do you explain a man who was born into wealth but persuaded millions of working-class Americans that he understood their lives? Who went bankrupt multiple times but convinced the world he was the ultimate businessman? Who had never held political office and defeated 17 experienced politicians? Who was marked, investigated, impeached twice, indicted 4 times, and came back stronger each time? He was the first person ever elected to the U.S. presidency without any previous government or military experience. Part of it is the hunger, in a large part of the American electorate, for someone who said what they felt, who did not speak the carefully calibrated language of professional politicians. Part of it is his extraordinary instinct for attention, for narrative, for the power of a simple, memorable message delivered with total conviction. Part of it simply is Donald Trump himself, a man who has been underestimated at almost every stage of his life, who has refused to follow the rules that govern everyone else, who has, against all probability, twice persuaded the American people to give him the most powerful office in the world. Whatever you think of him, and people think very different things, Donald Trump is one of the most consequential political figures in the history of the United States. And his story, the builder from Queens who became the most powerful man on earth, is one of the most extraordinary stories of modern times. Thank you for watching Shadow Files. If this story moved you, subscribe for more new stories every week.